everyone. I'll come into the frame and introduce myself. My name is Corey Ann Deatley. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at Colgate University and our International Coordinator. As you are aware, when we advertised this, we were going to invite 3 current seniors, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves. And so many of you have already sent such great questions, so we'll dive right into this panel so that way you can hear from everyone directly. Sasha, why don't you start?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Sasha Mikus. I'm a senior here at Colgate from Moscow, Russia. I am double majoring in environmental geography and cellular neuroscience, and on campus, I am a tutor for the geography department. I'm involved with the Colgate International community, and I volunteer for the COVE, which is our Center for Outreach, Volunteerism, and Education.
Thanks, Sasha. Hi, everyone. My name is Rupika Chakravarti. I'm a senior from Kolkata, India, majoring in computer science and minoring in economics and theater. On campus, I'm a tutor for the CS department, a part of a dance group, and on the student conduct board.
Hi everyone, my name is Minju Kim. I'm a senior from Seoul, South Korea, and I'm double majoring in psychology and theater. And on campus, I'm a peer advisor in off-campus study office. I am also part of a dance group, and I am currently participating in this semester's theater production.
All right, and you probably hear my voice right now, or at least I hope that you do. If you students, if you do ever have any trouble hearing us, feel free to use the chat function and let us know. And as we move through the panel, if you do have any other questions that are coming up that are organically you're thinking of, feel free to let us know through the chat function as well too. But guys, let's get started. And let's see. Okay, let's start with what was the most important factor that made you decide to come to Colgate in the very first place?
Do you want to go?
Okay. When I was looking for schools, I was only looking at liberal arts schools in the Northeast, so it got really repetitive because all the websites look exactly the same, just like a different color combination. I was looking for a school where people were excited to be here. I didn't care if a school had 20 clubs or 200 clubs. If nobody went to those clubs, it didn't matter to me. And at Colgate, I found that people here are genuinely excited to be here. They don't just sit in their rooms. Everybody's doing something on campus, which is what attracted me to Colgate.
I have a very similar story, actually. After I got accepted, but before I chose to come here, I had the fortune of talking to a number of current students and alumni, and across the board, like with a difference of like 2 decades in terms of graduation dates, I got this like sense of like, as Sasha mentioned, this undying love for Colgate, and also the sense of almost brutal honesty, which is very refreshing. As Sasha said already, like it does get repetitive, and I'm sure you'll realize that as you go through the college application process. And to have an institution where people are so willing to talk honestly about what's good and maybe also what's not and what they're working on is something that I prized a lot, and I still do, and I'm glad I'm here.
Awesome. Okay, so let me see. Let's go with what is it like to be an international student at Colgate?
Minju, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So what is it like to be an international student on campus? So it is very visible that like not everyone, but then like most people will realize that we are from outside of the U.S., and which is fine because like that gives us like a sense of uniqueness, I feel, and people are really everyone's really enthusiastic to hear about where we come from and like what kind of background story we have, and try to like make a conversation out of it. And yeah, I mean it's different, but it also feels important to be unique in this campus.
I love being part of the international community has been something very important to me over the years, and I would say is a very tight-knit community. Like I know all of the international students in our year, and we do a lot of events together, and it's just like a sort of like once you get on campus, immediately you have that group of people that you can rely on, which I think is wonderful.
And let's touch more upon that. When you guys first came to Colgate, what was your transition like from your home country? Was there anything that in particular you think you would like other students to know?
I was fortunate. I don't know. I feel fortunate. Like the transition was very smooth for me, and I think a large part, and a lot of other students will say the same thing. In a large part, because international student orientation is like about like 3 or 4 days before like the rest of the incoming fresh first year class gets to Colgate. So you have this time with just like 70 of your peer international students, 70 to 80 depending on the year, where like you can like kind of navigate the campus, like from everything from like like going and getting like a phone number to like bedding, because that's not maybe something that you're carrying from home, to even like navigating like, oh, where the buildings are, like all of that is something that people will walk you through. And that's when you are first introduced to like that close knit community that Sasha mentioned, because you'll have often it ends up being like more mentors than mentees. Like there, everyone wants to give back, so there'll be a lot of like upperclassmen international students who come and help out with the orientation even if they aren't necessarily designated to do that. So you get to meet a lot of people who will then end up guiding you through your first year, and like in my case, like a lot of them are my best friends now. So that's like your first introduction, so it's like a great way to start off at Colgate. And then when the rough times come, like if you're feeling homesick, they're there for you. So yeah, my transition was smooth.
Yeah. Uh, I just want to echo what Rufika said. I think Sasha too, but we went through 3 orientations in our freshman year, like international orientation, and there's like special program that we were in, and the freshman like regular orientation. And every time I feel very worn out, I like always come back to the ISL family, and like I'm like so thankful that was like the first orientation I got into, and that helped me like find my ground in this campus much easier, much faster, and so that I can go through the rest of the semester and the year in like 3 years here. Yeah.
Yeah, and building off of what Rupika said, for international pre-orientation, none of the people who participate in it actually are required to be there. So they're all volunteers, and they're all really excited to see the incoming first year class. So you get off the bus and they're just like grabbing your suitcases and they're like, let's go, like let's meet everyone. They're just really genuinely excited to have you on campus, which really helps with the transition.
I know I'm asking you to think back all the way to your own first year, and you guys are in your senior year, but can I push you a little further and say, how did you guys make friends when you were at Colgate in your first year?
I think a big part for me was going to the club fair. The club fair happens at the beginning of every semester, and then I ended up joining like 12 clubs and then going to all the meetings and then realizing I can't possibly have that much time on my hands to do all of them. And then just being part of that club community made me meet a lot of people. Also, first year seminar.
Mhm.
How was your guys' first year seminar?
What did each of you take?
So first year seminar is essentially a class that every first year student takes, and it's a different class for different students. And in the class, you have about 14 to 18 people, and you all go through orientation together. And my class was titled Natural Hazards and Disasters in the Media.
I took one of our core curriculum classes, Challenges of Modernity, which is essentially a study of, I always struggle with how to describe challenges of modernity, but it's a study of like what we consider the modern world, or rather specifically probably the modern Western world, and like the thoughts and like schools of philosophy that come with it.
I also took challenges of modernity, but with a bit of theater included into it. So it was like that class who like we basically touched based on all the plays and like most like theatrical works, and that like we also had to take basic acting as like on top of that. So it was also required for everyone who's taking that core class. So we did get really close, and I made like one of the best friends I had in Colgate through that class.
Yeah. And obviously your residential hall. So one of my best friends was my suite mate first year that we were here. So you get to do events with your residential hall a lot. So you get to know everyone who lives with you.
Yeah.
I'm getting several questions as I'm looking through what was submitted about the distribution requirements and the core curriculum. And so I feel like having just talked about the freshman seminar and challenges of modernity, let's talk about that now. So I guess well, should I start with what is one thing that makes the core curriculum unique?
Yeah. I so should I just give a layover of what the core curriculum looks like?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So the core curriculum at Colgate is 4 classes, 4 out of 32 credits that you're required to take before you graduate. One is, as we mentioned, Challenges of Modernity, which shows up on everyone's transcripts who graduates from Colgate. The other one is Legacies of the Ancient World, which is a study of the Western civilization mostly and how it came to be what it is today. The other two are what we call menu style classes. So they're kind of umbrella classes with a lot of choices that you have, and you can choose what class you want within them. The third is core scientific perspectives, which essentially is just, it not isn't necessarily like, oh, you have to take Calc 1, but it's kind of just like introducing you to a scientific way of thinking, for what's that word.
Yeah, my natural hazards and disasters in the media class was a scientific perspective course.
Yeah. And then finally, we have core communities and identities, where we typically focus on a region, which is defined very interestingly. It could be a region from anything from a country to a river. We have something called Core Danube, which looks at the cultural implications of having such an important river flowing through such like big points in Europe. So you have core Danube, core China, core San Francisco. So there are like different regions of the world that are focused on, and it's kind of just to engage with how to embrace a culture and how to think about different cultures. So that's the overview of what the core curriculum looks like. What I think is unique about the core curriculum at Colgate is it's very evident how it's making you think in different ways. And by the time, you're supposed to take these by the end of your sophomore year, and by then you will have an understanding of very clearly of like what it means to be analytical in the way you're approaching something versus empathizing with an idea. And that goes a long way irrespective of what you end up majoring in or what you end up doing in life.
Can you give an example of that, though? That's a you just gave us
Very
Yeah.
broad. Okay, sure. So my core scientific perspective was a class called Galileo and the Church, which essentially kind of we thought about science and religion and how they intersect and how they might be different, but also at the end of the day, how they're both just kind of two forms of philosophy and flip sides of the same coin, is at least what my understanding was of the class. And as a computer science major, that was very interesting while taking like intro to philosophy and a computer science class, seeing how all three of them, I took all of them the same semester. And there were actual moments when I was like, oh, this like reading that I did in Galileo and the Church makes sense in philosophy, or the logic that I've learned in computer science makes a lot of sense in terms of what Galileo was thinking when he was thinking what he was. And so like there are literal connections, and that's like not a super uncommon story you'll hear at Colgate. Almost everyone's had a moment like that.
Yeah, I know that a lot of I don't know about you, but then I was really worried to take core classes and also distribution requirements that are not in like what I'm interested in. So like, for example, I was really nervous to take scientific perspective because I'm not a science person at all. But that ended up becoming my favorite class in Colgate. I took Advents of Atomic Bomb. So we looked into the Hiroshima atomic bomb in Japan, and that like implication behind the scientific development and also like political like conflicts around that. And that was like the best class I ever took in Colgate. And so I think that's like the benefits of having core classes. So like it makes you like branch out to the areas that you have like no interest in before, but now like you discover all this new information and realm of knowledge and like,
Yeah.
what is this? Yeah.
What are some of your favorite campus traditions?
Right. Well, my favorite campus event is Holi. It happens every year, and I mean, some of you might be familiar, but it's the Festival of Colors. And we do that out on Whitnall Field, and everybody just gets together and throws colors at each other. And everybody's just, it's honestly, it happens in the spring, and the campus starts warming up. We just came out of the long winter, so everybody's just excited to be out and about and just throwing colors at each other. And I think that's the most dynamic our campus like is one of the most dynamic events on campus. So I really enjoy going to Holi.
Yeah, same. But one of my other favorite campus traditions is, as a part of your first year orientation, you have commencement, convocation, same thing, convocation, where you essentially Colgate campus is on a hill, which like is a part of the charm, I guess. But it's a good introduction during orientation of like climbing up and down the hill. So during convocation, you kind of go from the bottom of the hill to the top to the chapel, and then during commencement, during your graduation after your 4 years here, you go from the chapel to the bottom of the hill. So it's kind of a very physical, like, manifestation of your journey at Colgate. So that's something I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, my favorite is Dance Fest, which happens every semester. So all the dance groups come together, and they perform in the chapel. It's like a really big stage that can hold like 1,000 people. But and like during Dance Fest, like the line is like all the way to like across the quad, which is like very long line basically. And it's like a most integrated event in Colgate, I think. So I really enjoy Dance Fest.
Ooh, we just got a question about what are some on-campus work opportunities for international students, and do you know if it's possible to assist in the language department with your native language?
Yes, actually. So far short, but I had an extended study in Hong Kong. Actually, so did Minju. We both did an extended study in Hong Kong. And as a part of the requirement to go on that extended studies are essentially where you take a class on Colgate's campus and then you travel with that class for 3 to 4 weeks, either in the summer or the winter, to a location pertinent to the class. So we traveled to Hong Kong, and before we could go, we had to take this like half credit class in Cantonese, which is a language that is predominantly spoken in Hong Kong. And that actually, we don't have any faculty who speak Cantonese. So we had native Cantonese speakers from Hong Kong and mainland China who actually tutored us through that class. So that is absolutely an opportunity. The Keck Center, which is where the language departments are kind of centered, have loads of opportunities for tutors in like different languages. So if you're a native speaker, that's definitely something you should look into. Do you want to touch on other?
I mean, besides that, any job that's available on campus, the international students get involved in. I think probably all of us have had an on-campus job.
Yeah.
Admissions, be tutoring in different departments. I worked as a chemistry laboratory assistant. I didn't even know chemistry that well, but you can get involved with anything on campus.
What were you doing there?
I was honestly just sitting around, but my job description was I did the same chemistry lab the year before, the year prior, so I kind of knew what the experiments were, and whenever somebody didn't really understand how to use an instrument or why we were doing what we were doing, I'd be there to help them out and tell them what was going on. But yeah.
Ooh. Okay, so we have a question that is somewhat similar to this. It's, hey, I know that Colgate is located in a rather rural area. So what are some recreational activities available near campus? And I'm also going to add on campus and well, okay, I'll stop there and then I might ask some follow-up questions.
Firstly, good job on knowing that. You are already ahead of where I was at this time when I was applying to colleges. So good on you. Yes, we're in a very rural location, but that also gives us opportunities that may not necessarily have come along if we weren't in as rural a location as we are. So our outdoor education program is one of the strongest in the country. We have everything from, I was very impressed. We have everything from ice climbing, rock climbing, kayaking, whitewater rafting. If you're not like super big on like intense outdoorsy stuff, there's like low-key, like one of the outdoor ed programs that I did was like moonlight kayaking.
Oh my god, I've wanted to do that.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was great. Like, so there's a lake that's about a 5-minute drive from campus where we have our personal dock. Like Colgate owns like a boathouse there, and you can kind of go there like excepting for the winter months. When the lake is not frozen, you can go there and rent out like kayaks, paddle boards, pedal boats, canoes for free, and kind of just like go do your own thing. So in terms of like physical activities, there's an abundance. There are hiking trails. There's a lot going on. Skiing is of course a big thing given our location. There's a club that leads like pretty regular, I think once every 2 weeks, once the winter months start. they lead a trip to surrounding ski hills, and based on your skill level you can like sign up for different trips and like go on the bunny hill, I think it's called, if you haven't skied before, range. And also like if you're more advanced, those are also options that are available. Do you want to talk about non
Yeah,
athletic?
I think just as a general thing, the big part about being on a rural campus is, unlike in state schools where the majority of the people come from that state and can leave to go home during the weekend, at Colgate, everybody comes from all over. So everybody's pretty much stuck here for the weekends and for the week. And so we just make our own fun. Like everybody, you would expect all of your friends to be on campus during the weekend, and you can get together with everyone and just like hang out, which is something that I didn't realize was not a thing at other schools. And because we're a residential campus, nobody really commutes here. So it's like everybody's here. So we're all just like making events for each other. Donovan's Pub, which is a dining location on campus, has trivia nights and stand-up comedy nights. And our residential commons do a lot of events like apple picking. So there's plenty of stuff to do on campus and off campus, as Rupika mentioned.
Yeah.
So we just got a really fun question that I think.
Oh,
so
no.
I could ask. Well, so let's start with what did you guys do this weekend? I know that a lot. I know that it's Sunday. So in case you haven't realized, it's Sunday morning here at Colgate. It's 9:30 a.m. I know you guys are seniors.
Yes.
And I know that you have
We're
a
too
lot of
old.
research.
They're gonna think we're so lame.
We're too old. You should not ask us this question.
Fine, walk through what you guys did this week if you don't want to walk through.
Okay.
This
Oh,
weekend.
week is even worse. I can walk through weekend. Week you don't want to know. Weekend.
Fall break.
Oh, fall break.
Oh, yeah, we just had fall break, which is essentially this 4 day. So we get Monday and Tuesday off in addition to Friday and Saturday. So it becomes this 4 day weekend. And can I go first? I'm really excited.
Yes.
So I went to New York City, which is about like 4.5 hours away. And I went to 2 concerts, one of which is Post Malone.
Nice.
Yeah, and the other is rapper named Playboy Carti. Irrelevant, but anyway. So like those are things like if you're at Colgate, like especially international students make like the most use of their breaks as you can. So like most breaks you'll have people, and of course it's totally okay, you'll always have, even during winter break, even during summer, actually for the 3 months there's like a very strong international community that still stays on campus, because like it's not really feasible for us to pay like $1,000 to go home for a week. So there at any given break you'll have friends who are on campus. But that being said, everyone always makes sure that they use some of the breaks to like travel around. There are countries that you can go to on a US visa that, at least like for me, like I may not have been able to go on just an Indian passport. So like people make full use of their breaks to do like a lot of the things that they may not have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah.
Ninja, you went to New York City too.
I also did went to New York City. It was not as fun as Rubika's, because I went there to take GRE, which is not fun, but oh well. But we
But
did
it's
have fun
constructive.
after that, and like we did de-stress. And before that also, I mean, like Sasha and our friend group, we had like a really big feast where we brought like different food from
I saw
different
that.
different countries actually. I
Yeah,
think
we
Korean
all just
food.
like made
Mhm.
something.
She cooked like Russian pancakes, which was really amazing. And we like had noodles and all that bunch of stuff, and we came together and just like had a giant feast, and that was amazing. So like breaks and weekends, you really get to hang around with friends like these two said.
Yeah.
And how many of you typically stay on campus for winter break as well too?
I have stayed for 2 of the 3. It really depends because it's a whole month. So last year I stayed for half of that time. My sophomore year I stayed the whole time, and my first year I went home. So it really just kind of depends on how you're feeling that year. But I did a whole month on campus my sophomore year, and it was honestly fine. Minja was there with me for a little bit, and then she left. but no, they feed you, which is nice. So the dining hall is open during the breaks, and food is free. So you don't have to, even if you don't have a meal plan, you have somewhere to go. And especially because you're an international student, they let you stay in your own room and stuff like that. So you don't have to relocate anywhere. So you're just like continuing on as you were.
Awesome. This is one that I think is going to be fun. What is the craziest thing you've done on campus?
Oh,
Oh.
can I go first?
Yes, please.
Great.
Okay, so there's like a little bit of it's not really a tradition, but it's something that people do every year at the end of the spring. So,
I'm scared about what she's gonna say.
I know what she's gonna say.
so towards the end of the spring, a bunch of people get together and jump into Taylor Lake.
my
I
gosh,
knew
I
it.
knew
Oh
it.
no.
And that is something I did. I don't advise. It was cold and it was dirty. But it was, I think it was the craziest thing I've done on campus, jumping in. I was wearing a white tank top. It is no longer white. But that's something that a lot of people participate in. So it was fun to just like have a group together and you all jump into the lake together.
So for
Anyway.
context, Taylor Lake is a man-made lake at the bottom of the Colgate Hill. It's owned by Colgate.
And it's
So
shallow. It's
it's-
pretty shallow.
Oh, I
as
didn't
I
know
found that
that.
out the hard way. But okay.
And not the cleanest water ever.
Yes. Not recommended,
Yeah,
just to
no.
clarify.
Yes, absolutely not recommend.
All right, now I know both of you got, well, all three of you guys are a little bit stressed out because it's senior year and this is a busy week, even though you guys are still having some fun. But can you talk a little bit about the intellectual atmosphere at Colgate and maybe elaborate a little bit more about your first year? Well, I guess maybe touch on each of the years that you've been here. Maybe.
Oof.
Hmm.
We will be here for the
Yeah.
rest of this panel. That will be what we're talking about.
I guess like as a like brief like starting point before we get into, I don't know how to answer the each year part, but overall overarching over the past 3.5 years, something I've come to appreciate is the intentionality with which people are here. Like as one of you pointed out, like Colgate is in a fairly rural location. Nobody just happens to drive past Colgate and be like, I want to work here. So faculty and staff along with students are here for a reason. They commit to being in a place like Colgate because they want to fully engage with students and with the intellectual process. And so you see that in the way you go about your life at Colgate. You will run into professors while going grocery shopping. I've had professors, like I've been to professors' houses for dinner. I've gone to professors who've even like moved to different schools. I've met them up for coffee like midway. Like there are connections that are formed at Colgate, which I prize a lot, which to be fair may not be the most important thing for a lot of other people, but having that connection that I know for sure I will be able to continue past Colgate irrespective of whether I stay in academia or I go into industry is something that I prize a lot. And also the fact that they're willing to listen is like something that I wasn't used to before, but is definitely a big thing at Colgate.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked about Colgate is my high school was very small, so like I wanted to have the same experience because I really had a good experience in classroom settings. And Colgate is a relatively small college, so each class is about like average like 18 people, and there are some bigger classes, but as much as like when you go like more upper level classes, like
They get smaller.
the smaller. And I know someone who took a class with only like 5 people in it. It's happening, and it's really so like to touch base on the ear part. In my freshman year, it was a little bit hard to like speak up in class because like only because like I wasn't really that confident in my English when I was a first year, and I was like really conscious about what people was gonna react to what I'm saying in class. But as like the year progressed, I had less of that fear because I knew that everyone was so accepting for whatever you were saying, and you'll look at it in critical lenses, but then the first reaction to what people are saying in class will be like, oh, accepting it and then thinking about it and just like reacting to it. And I got used to that environment as like the year progressed, and then now I would try to be very active in class, and it's really fun to be active in class because like you feel like your voice is heard in a bit. So yeah, that's like the environment that I really enjoy in Colgate.
A big part of my academic experience at Colgate has been, especially over the past 2 years, me having the ability to shape my own learning. And it's really important because I really enjoy GIS, which is like a very specific area of geography. So we only have 2 or 3 or so classes offered in GIS at Colgate. But through talking to my professors, I've managed to use the principles learned in GIS in other projects for other classes. And I've had professors who just sat me down and were like, what do you want to learn? And I would tell them what I wanted to learn. And they were like, okay, let's think of how we can incorporate that into a project that you're doing so you get to learn whatever it is you want to. Like, we are here to help you. So tell us what you want. And I think that that's been really important for me.
How's the Wi-Fi on campus, guys?
Is that an actual
That's an
question?
actual
That's a good
question.
question.
It's an important question.
It's
yeah.
a very important question. Spotty. I mean, it's pretty. I think it's pretty good generally. Like,
Yeah.
I watch a lot of Netflix. I don't have an issue, and
Yeah.
I live down the hill. Mostly, it's just like when you're moving around campus, it's going to be spotty, just because it's like it's good in the buildings, but outside of the buildings, when you're moving around, it goes in and out. But I think for the most part, I don't have
Yeah,
an
but I
issue.
think when you're in a building, like sometimes, we have these like waves, like I think a year ago they like switched vendors. Like in like once in a blue moon, maybe there'll be an issue. But I know a lot of people on campus who just don't have phone numbers, who don't have data, and they just live completely off of Wi-Fi. And I feel like that's like as much as you need to know. Like
Yeah.
you can completely like do well off of Colgate's Wi-Fi. It's unlimited.
Yeah.
Like there's
I'm now going to pivot back to academics because there have been several questions about research on campus. And so, can you talk a little bit about the opportunities that you've had, whether they're during the year, during the summer?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So when I wasn't a research assistant or anything. I didn't delve into research like really deeply until actually senior year when I'm doing my own research for senior thesis. But I know that like you can just approach your professor and say like, oh hey, I'm really interested in this topic. Can I maybe shadow a research that you're doing or like any of the students you're doing? So in my junior year, in my second semester of sophomore year actually, long time ago. I shadowed a senior who's doing a thesis that I was really interested in, and I got to help out with her project and then see how the senior thesis process is going to be like, because I will have to do it in like the next few years. Yes.
What were you doing?
So I'm really interested in like psychology and language. So she was doing how gestures like help you learn a second language. So she was testing it on Chinese and having different like tonations and how that will enhance, like having a certain gesture will enhance that or not. And my research, just like this question, is about like how speaking a foreign language affects your decision. It's like foreign language effect. So like I'm currently doing a research on that. So exciting.
I've been involved in research just since my first semester, and Minju said you can approach your professors to ask them for research positions, but you will also have professors sometimes approach you. Professors know exactly what they want in a research assistant, and so sometimes they just send out emails to departments and they're like, we're looking for someone like this. Does that sound like you? Do you want to apply for this position? So my first year, I got an email from a professor who just said, I heard you were Russian. Come talk to me. And I was like, oh, okay. So she just needed someone who was a Russian speaker to help her read some police case files. And so I was involved with doing that my first semester. And then as I sort of progressed through the geography department, people end up knowing your strengths. So when their colleagues have a project, they'll be like, oh, maybe think about reaching out to Sasha. Let's say, I think she knows a bit about it. Like her projects seem similar. So professors will also reach out to you. So there's plenty of opportunities to get involved in research, I think, is what I found. If you want it, you will get it.
Yeah.
On campus and during the summer too, because you can stay here for the summer to do research.
Can you guys speak a little bit about that and how even Colgate's location has impacted your research opportunities?
I don't think Colgate's location impacts at all the research opportunities that are available, because like in this day and age, like you have teams. So the research that summer after sophomore year, I was here over the summer doing computer science research full time, and it was under the National Science Foundation, and it was a project that was far bigger than the team at Colgate. There were just 3 students and 1 professor at Colgate doing it, but there were teams at other schools as well. And so like location is kind of not pertinent, at least at the very least for computer science, because we're all coding, like maybe like we're uploading it to GitHub or whatever it is. Like it's easy to share material, so wherever you are, it doesn't really matter realistically. Like I could probably have gone home and still done the research that I was doing at Colgate. So I don't necessarily know whether location plays a big role, but because Colgate is a primarily undergraduate institution, you still have professors doing graduate level research, except not having the graduate level students to prey on. So they end up preying on the undergrad students. So you end up getting opportunities that you may not have had at like, a state school, just because the classes are so small. As Sasha said, the research that I did, also I took a class with that professor the semester before, and at the end of the class he came to me and he's like, hey, like what are you doing this summer, do you want to stay here and do research with me? So classes are small enough for professors to get to know you individually and know if they want you in their research project or not. So it goes both ways. Like if you have your own project, people will be more than happy to advise you, but maybe if you don't have a very clear idea of what you want to do and you just have interest, like the project I did was in data analytics, and I may not necessarily have been able to make an entire project by myself, but I learned a lot by like kind of tagging along on this like really big project that I like was just like a microcosm in.
And we have a question that's very much on subject with this is, and you may laugh at this, but is the academic work so rigorous that it's tough to balance this kind of personal research that you're doing?
It can be, to be completely honest.
If you don't, I think it's important to know, like, you have a lot of advisors, your academic advisors in each of the departments that you're declared in, and your administrative dean, all these people advising you on best steps to take. So you can definitely, as a student, over enroll and just be out of your depth completely. But if you really listen to what your advisors are telling you, they know what they're doing. And if you follow their advice, it's also really easy to have classes that are rigorous, but also to have enough time to pursue your own research. It's just a balancing act. Yeah.
And I feel like you have enough time to learn. Like it is a learning process. You have some. I feel like almost everyone I talk to has a similar story of there was this one semester, sophomore year or junior year, where they just like were not a human. So you learn from those semesters. Like some people, even like freshman year coming in, they're like, oh, like I have all these AP credits, like I know enough, and like I can take 5 classes coming in, and maybe that turns out to be a good idea for some people and not for others. And so you learn from those experiences where to set your limits. So by the time you're approaching a situation where you need to make like big decisions in terms of like, am I doing a senior thesis, which would like take up a considerable amount of time, or should I be doing additional research? You will have had the experience to be able to like judge for yourself where you should be drawing the line in terms of like your mental health and all of that.
Okay, so for instance, if there's a student here who's interested in computer science and they want to explore their own apps, will they have, if they're spending the time, if they separate?
Absolutely. Like there was I think class of 2018, but there was this one guy basically who was a CS major, did nothing but CS and dance. He was also like a brilliant dancer, but he spent all of the rest of his time just like doing independent projects. Didn't even have a resume, to be honest, and now works at Google. So like, you have all these like kinds of crazy stories at Colgate. Point is, there is like time is flexible. It's up to you to like judge how much time you want to give to what, including academics. To be completely honest, you'll have people who like spend hours on end, like like making notes upon notes, and then you'll have some people who maybe don't need to do that to like kind of just cruise by in classes. So you judge what's important for you. And obviously like there's some modicum of limitations of like what's expected in terms of like maybe don't get a D in all 4 classes in one semester, but besides that, like it's very flexible. Yeah.
I appreciate you all being so candid about this, because I think often it's hard to glean this sometimes from our websites, what our academic atmosphere is really like. There's another question that was asked way earlier, but I think it feels appropriate with how candid you are being. Are students really happy at Colgate?
That's way too meta a question to be able to answer.
Really? You think so?
I mean, okay, like I'm very happy at Colgate.
I am very happy.
Yeah,
at
like there's a
Colgate.
reason that we're here, right? Like talking
Yeah.
to y'all, like we are all very happy. I would say there are maybe some students who aren't, but that's also just, I think, like a nature of like the human condition. Like sometimes people are happy and sometimes they're not, and I don't necessarily think that has some like direct correlation with the fact that they're at Colgate. Like,
Yeah, and I think a lot of Colgate is what you make of it. So if you come here with the right attitude and really try to make the best of everything, then you will enjoy yourself here, I think. I don't know. At least that's been my experience.
yeah, there's like a lot of like structures in place at
Support
Colgate
systems, yeah.
to like help different kinds of people through like maybe differing needs. Like we acknowledge that everyone doesn't come from the same place, and like maybe like the right attitude might not look the same for you depending on where you're coming from, or maybe what type of schooling system you had. And that's the point, is that's something that's acknowledged and talked about at Colgate, so that's something you'll also be able to realize through your time here. And again, in the spirit of complete honesty, because that's what I prized when I was looking at schools, um, sometimes people have a rough time. And I know people who aren't a big fan of Colgate because like there are things that maybe we don't do as good as we could, but even those people will agree that we're trying, by the sheer fact that this is something that we have had a conversation about. So I think most struggles that people may have relating to like a college experience is something that's acknowledged at Colgate, and I think that goes a long way.
I'm going to push you guys a little bit further just because there was a question at the very beginning of the panel that I think again feels right to talk about it now. What is one thing that you would each change about Colgate? Did you just roll your eyes?
No, it's like you're giving me such tough questions every time.
Okay, maybe this is the last tough question.
I think there are a couple of things. So as a senior, looking back on my Colgate experience, I think we have had a lot of big events on campus happening, and personally, I wish. I mean, that might be just the nature of like bureaucracy and how like institutions deal with events. But I personally wish that communication would be a bit faster. But I know that they are sort of like working on that right now, and it has gotten way better over the years. Sort of like how administration communicates with the rest of campus, and we have had student groups. You were on one of the like action groups. Like
Probably.
you
Which
were
one?
probably so like I think like they created working groups. I think they were
Oh,
called.
right.
Yes,
Yes,
you
yes,
were on it,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Yes. So they have definitely like seen the need for this change, and they have like contracted out to students to help bring this change about. So even though communication, in my opinion, is still maybe like could be improved, it's definitely gotten better since I came home here.
Well, one thing that I want to change, but I know it's also impossible to change just because of the nature of Colgate, is the diversity. Like we always emphasize that, but then we also acknowledge that we lack diversity in a very broad sense. Like in terms of economic diversity, like racial diversity, and all that stuff. And like Colgate is predominantly white. I'm just gonna lay that out. Like you can just like look at the statistics and you'll know. But the environment itself is also, you can sometimes feel that it's very like white upper class centered. And it can be hard to navigate through that space when you're not used to that, when you're not, because for me I was never used to being a minority because I'm coming from Korea where like everyone's like the same, basically everyone looks the same as in the broad sense. So it was really different to have that experience, and it was also very difficult to be a minority in the beginning. And I found like a group of people who will help me navigate through that, and we all like um, try to have like more diversity on campus, or more like minority voices heard on campus. And I think it's going pretty well. Just, and I know that there's so many support groups and so many like clubs that like are like activating, like fighting for that, advocating for that, which I really appreciate. But then I just like hope that there could be more diversity, but I also know it's kind of hard given the nature of the school.
I think at this point in time, we have a relatively still, I'd say, new administrative body in terms
Yes.
of like the head voices that you would hear at Colgate. Like our president kind of came in with our class year, and yes, it's been 3 years, but that's still also in terms of like precedence of universities. He's still pretty young at Colgate. Dean of college is new. Dean of students has been changing for the past couple of days, yours. But so like it's a very dynamic situation right now, which is why I feel like a lot of the things that we may say now may not be pertinent by the time y'all come in, because by then it may be a lot more structured and a lot more receptive, because now there's a learning curve for people who are coming into Colgate, right? And with that, something that I've struggled with is having people acknowledge that students are here just for 4 years. So it's frustrating if like everyone has to like pick up the baton that like their senior left for them, like for a different cause, because it's a little slow to get things done at Colgate. But that likely is because of like the flux, like everything's in flux right now. So maybe this is something that will just fix itself over the years.
Thank you again for being so candid. There was a question that was sent in, I think a few days ago, so we'll pivot completely. Are the dorms clean? What are they like? Can you elaborate on where you lived in your first year?
Some dorms are old, more like older than like the new like hotel like dorms that we just got it this year, and they're amazing. They're so clean. They're also high tech, and I was like amazed when I first entered that space, and I'm like, why didn't we have this in our first year? But some buildings are old, like some doors can be creaky. But I think it's relatively clean in general, and I think also like the spacing is very well like spaced out within the dorm and also like in between the dorms. So I did not have any problems with the dorms except for like the walls being a little too thin.
Yeah.
But that's like I think all colleges are like that.
It's like a prerequisite for a college to have
dorm.
thin walls.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know. I was satisfied with my dorm. Like mostly.
Yeah, we were lucky though. We were both
Mhm.
living in this sort of like newly renovated building, and we had suites.
in our first.
So
first year,
yes,
yeah.
we had suites, so we didn't share bathrooms, showers. Oh, but then you lived in Gatehouse. I forgot about that.
I did.
I was pretty lucky with my living arrangements. I lived in suites first year and sophomore year, and now I live down in the apartments for seniors. So I've had a really nice living situation. Where did you live first year?
I
Still
lived in
Andrews?
Curtis.
Oh,
Yeah, so that was also fairly recently renovated, which actually says, well, like most of the buildings I think now on campus have been renovated within living memory. So like you will have students at Colgate who can be like, oh yeah, I remember when this was renovated.
Yeah.
There are just I think 2 or 3 dorms, residential halls that are left on campus that are yet to be renovated, but it's definitely in the works.
Mhm.
And I honestly think it's like a very easily livable situation. Like they're clean, you have custodians coming in every day. Obviously, like like there are some borderline obnoxious events that happen, like like someone will end up puking like one night, but then you'll always have like someone on call to help with that. You have like your we call residential advisors community leaders at Colgate, which are essentially just peer students who were designated for that floor to like help out in somewhat emergency situations, so they can take care of it for you. There's like a lot of ways to make sure the space stays clean. And yeah, I think like yeah, it's like a very comfortable setup. Any given room you'll have a bed, dresser, a desk, chair, and some sort of a closet slash wardrobe situation. So it's very livable.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to cook in your dorms?
Ooh.
Depends on where you live.
Yes.
If there's
depends
a
on where you
kitchen,
live.
yes. If there's no.
Yeah, a lot of people just bring in microwaves. Sophomore year, I had a friend who just cooked all her meals in the microwave. It was honestly pretty impressive. She like made eggs in the microwave.
You can do a lot with a
Yeah.
You
microwave.
can do a lot of the microwave, yeah. And then there are just residence halls that have kitchens downstairs. And then for upperclassmen, so juniors and seniors, all of their living spaces are equipped with kitchens, because junior, senior year, you're not required to be on the meal plan. So the assumption is that some people will go off the meal plan and will cook for themselves. So all juniors and seniors have access to kitchens and are allowed to cook.
And
Yeah.
frankly, at this point, I think most first years and sophomores do
That's
as well.
Yeah.
Even if it's not necessarily their actual residential hall, probably the one next door has a kitchen and you have access to it like throughout the day.
And international students have a kitchen. We have our own kitchen.
Yeah.
which is really nice.
And we
'cause,
have like events there.
yeah, because in your first year you get really homesick, not like also homesick, but also for food.
Yeah,
sick, so
yes.
you really miss your home food. So it's really nice to have access to the kitchen all around campus.
I'm glad that you brought that up. So one of our last questions, let's do, which just came in. What is one thing that made you feel at home, given all of your different backgrounds? Was it food? Was it something else?
Oof. For me, I think it was the people. I know that's like a bit of a cliche thing to say, but when I got on campus, I just felt so welcomed. I felt like I belonged, and it was because everybody I met was genuinely like, it felt like they were excited to have me. They were excited to introduce me to the campus community. They were excited to learn more about me. All the professors, all the students, the upperclassmen. It was just there was one day that I distinctly remember. It was Michael, who was a senior at the
Oh.
time. He basically just took me under his wing and took me to a field hockey game and just like talked to me about Colgate and about my classes that I'm taking. And I was like, oh, I want to be a neuroscience major. And he was like, well, tell me about your schedule. Like, you might want to enroll in chemistry right now. Talk to this professor. And he was just so helpful. And he was like, let's go see a movie. And then he just took me and my friend around and just showed us the ropes. And he was just so nice. And we both just felt like, oh, you really don't even have to worry about making friends. They will just come to you.
Yeah.
Is it Michael Francis James?
Yeah,
He was
Michael
nice.
was wonderful.
Yeah, so I think he was also international. So like
Yeah.
this like bond between like upperclassmen and like underclassmen international students is really deep and meaningful, and that's why I think like most of us come back for ISL. I volunteered for 2 years. I was like a core group leader for one year, and we really do the best, and we really want to do the best for you to feel like this is home. And one thing I really like is like we, as a core group leader, we call our members, our like group members, babies, because like we really feel like there are like babies, and like we want to take care of you, and it's like we want to make this connection meaningful to you. So I think that's one thing that actually made me feel like I was at home at ISM.
We're receiving a lot of questions about financial aid. Does anyone feel comfortable talking about whether or not that played a role in their decision to come to Colgate, whether or not that was, whatever you feel comfortable with?
For me, that was actually a big part of why I came to Colgate. When I applied initially to colleges, my financial situation was a little different. So then once I received all of my acceptance letters and my financial situation had changed, my financial aid awards were not really matching up to what I could afford. And I had to go back and email colleges and be like, hello, so my financial situation changed. Would you consider working with me and like adjusting my financial aid? And Colgate was actually the only university that got back to me and was like, yes, like we take this really seriously. And if you really can prove that your financial situation has changed, we want you, we have accepted you into this college, and we will make sure that you're able to afford it. And that just felt to me like the other schools basically were just like, okay, well, no can do, goodbye. And like Colgate just willing to work with me, I just felt like they really wanted me, and I just felt so welcome that even if they hadn't adjusted my award, I would have gone to Colgate just because they tried.
Yeah, finance also, it was like a really big factor in my decision, because I sent out the same CSS profile, like whatever that same application to all the colleges, but then like I got significantly more financial aid from Colgate than compared to all the other colleges I applied, and I was really stressed out because like when I didn't get response from Colgate yet, because I got accepted all these colleges, but I couldn't pay for any of this and I couldn't afford any of this. So I was like, what am I gonna do? Then Colgate just like came to me like
that was literally what happened to me.
Yeah,
too. I was
it's like, oh my god, like I'm saved. But aside from that, like Colgate is really generous with financial aid. Also, when you're trying to like study abroad, like they don't want your financial situation to be a burden of like you pursuing like your further education. So like, I mean, I studied abroad multiple times. I mean, like in different settings, but Colgate did like provide aid for. Oh, like the rule is that they give you aid for one extended study and one like semester abroad study, and I got both of them. So like I really use Colgate's financial aid system personally. I think really well, and I'm really thankful for that thing.
Thank you for answering all of these questions. A little bit rapid fire, I know from me at times. I'm actually, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to insert myself here as well too, because a lot of questions are about the application process, and I know that I'm a better resource because I am the international coordinator for that. So
I can just
Good
get
friends.
up.
no, don't
Oh,
get up.
no.
okay.
Keep sitting.
No, I'm pretty sure. Okay.
Do you want to go in the middle?
No, I'm not going to go. No, there's no
Oh, I'm
reason
in the
for me
middle
to
now.
go in the
Hello,
middle.
everyone.
I'm fine right here where I am. Get yourselves comfortable. I think I saw that there were a lot of questions about whether or not the application process is holistic, how important are test scores, and so I'll walk through with the last 5 minutes a little bit about that, and then I actually know that we didn't get through all of the questions either, and there were some questions even specifically for each of you, particularly about your majors, and so what I'll do is I'll connect you with myself, or I will connect you with each of these students as well too. But know that when you are applying to Colgate, it sounds cheesy, but every student who comes to campus is an individual. And so we very much are holistic in our application review. Every single application is reviewed in a committee and is reviewed multiple times by people. And we absolutely spend a lot of time learning about you. Absolutely, your academics are the most important part of your application, but we are very interested in what type of school you go to. And so we understand if you are in a school that you're being taught a national curriculum, or if you are in a school that has the IB program or an AP program or does not have any of those. We'll take a look and we'll see how you have challenged yourself in the context of your school. And when you had the option to pick and choose your classes, how well did you do with them? Your teacher recommendations are really important to us because our professors are so closely working with our students once they come to campus. We do require testing, either the SAT or the ACT. We super score both of them, and we don't look at the writing section. And we also do require the TOEFL for students who are not studying in an English language school. And if you have any specific questions about that, you can email me directly and I can work with you to make sure your application requirements are complete. But absolutely, we are interested outside of the classroom, what you've been involved in, your extracurriculars, whether or not you have any significant family responsibilities. We are curious about your family background. We are also curious about your essay and how you write and how you think. And so we do spend a lot of time looking at your writing as well too. And so know that all of this very much is, we in fact for every single student have this kind of conversation. It is never just a bullet point checklist. It's very much we take a look at every single applicant. It does mean that sometimes I'm drinking a lot more coffee than I probably should, but it means that the reason why we have this system in place for reviewing applications is because we do care about every single individual that we accept and bring to campus. So I will thank you all for coming. I so appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday to listen in and hear more about Colgate, and feel free to reach out with any other questions that you have. And once again, thank you.